Hi, it's me, Teacher Mike from phuketpals. Welcome back to the 10th and final video of this writing technique series. If you haven't seen the other videos, I strongly suggest go back to the start, get your notebook out, make some notes and start getting these ideas, making the changes to your own writing that we've talked about in this series and improving as a writer as a result. Okay, now I mentioned in the last video about George Orwell, and it kind of it flicked on a light bulb in my head, and I thought, why not do the very last video from one of the masters of writing in the English language of the 20th century, probably my favourite writer. He's written books such as, that you probably know, such as 1984, Animal Farm, Coming Up for Air, Burmese Days, what else? Countless essays, countless, amazing writer. He also wrote for The Observer in London. And pretty much every time I read Orwell, whether it be in his essays or his novel form, I just kind of think to myself, this is how it should be done. You know, this is it, writing stripped down to its basics. It's so direct and just packed full of meaning, and there's no pretension to it whatsoever. Orwell's great. I love him so much. I'm going to share with you 6 tips that he gives for writers in his essay, Politics and the English Language, which I strongly suggest that you read if you haven't already. This is what they are. Let's go through in turn. Never use a metaphor or simile or any figure of speech which you're used to seeing in print. Now, how many of you out there are guilty of this? How many of you have heard a simile or a metaphor on a TV show or on the radio, on a podcast or whatever, or read it in a book, and you think, yeah, I'll take that, I'll use that myself. Well, Orwell's saying, don't be doing that. Metaphors have to spring out of your own mind. They have to, you can't just repeat what other people have said. Otherwise it sounds formulaic and just very made up. Okay, so metaphors and similes have to be original. Don't be swiping them from elsewhere. Number 2, never use a long word when a short word will do. This is fantastic advice. So many young writers throw in ridiculous SAT style words into their writing, and they think it makes them sound smarter or makes their writing better. It doesn't. It's pretentious, and also it makes the meaning of everything unclear. So if you can use a shorter word, use a shorter word. Don't be throwing in those words of 15 letters, 20, whatever it is. Throw away your SAT word list book and read some more Orwell. That's my advice. Next one. If it's possible to cut out a word, always cut it out. And in this course, we've talked a lot about this, okay? Especially with words like that, or unnecessary modifiers, or using verb to be too much at the start of a sentence, starting a sentence with there. These are all things we need to cut out from our writing. Things like adverbs as well. Be careful when you use adverbs that they aren't already implied in the verb that you've used in the sentence. Okay, so if you can cut words out, cut them out. That's the number one name of the game. 4, never use the passive voice when you can use the active, and this was in the last video. Okay, so in video 9 of this series you can find out all about that, so I won't go over it again. Number 5, never use a foreign phrase, a scientific word, or a jargon word if you can think of an everyday English equivalent. This is all about pretentiousness again. Again, a lot of students fill their writing full of foreign words, particularly French words, a bit of Spanish, Italian words thrown in there. There's really no need to do this if you can avoid it. It doesn't get you extra points anywhere, and it just seems a little bit, I say, pretentious. So I'd leave it out. Scientific words, again, only if you're writing only if you're writing in science for scientific papers, or in science class or for science papers, you should do this. Not really in any other situation. Also jargon, okay, slang, jargon, stay away from all that stuff. And yeah, that's about it. And then the final bit of advice that Mr. Orwell gives us, which is kind of a sign of his own wry sense of humour, is break any of these rules sooner than say anything barbarous. So he's kind of saying, break all of these rules if you must, if you're going to say something ridiculous, if you think you're going to say something ridiculous by using these rules. Okay, so that's about it. As I say, if you want to become a better writer, I really advise reading people like Orwell, if you're going back to the classics, read people like Hemingway. These are some of the best terse writers of the English language there have ever been. And yeah, you can learn so much just by reading a few chapters every day of their books or essays. So that's about it. That's the end of the series. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments section below. I hope you get some value out of the 10 videos we've made. And yeah, thanks very much for listening, and see you all soon. Have a good day. Bye bye.